to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ebro in the Morning. Laura Stiles, Mama Stiles, shout out to her. She's out being a mama. We got Rosenberg, and ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Staten Island's own, I guess, former representative from Staten Island, Max Rose.
I got 2 weeks left, man. I got 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Left,
2 weeks. All right, 2 weeks.
Don't hit me with an early retirement.
Well, but it was a bit of a grand opening, grand closing, right? You served one term as a House representative in Staten Island, which the win for a Democrat, and you being, I think, somebody who considers themselves moderately progressive, right? Like you would as a Democrat. You won an unprecedented, right? You won an unprecedented House seat in a New York City borough, which we all know is basically like the Florida of New York City, which is Staten Island. That's how many of us joke about it. But you won, and then in this, when you fought for the seat a second time, you recently just lost, and many people say it was because you walked in a Black Lives Matter march, and that is why I wanted you to come on the show. Because much is being made of Democrats losing seats because of defund the police and Black Lives Matter, et cetera, et cetera. I wanted to get into that with you. And I also I heard you speaking after the realization that you would not be serving a second term, where you said you're going to continue to fight. And you're going to continue to fight for people. You're going to continue to fight for equal justice. You're going to continue to fight for police accountability and these things that are near and dear to your heart. So I wanted to have you on for that because I appreciate somebody who doesn't have the job but still wants to do the right thing.
Thanks for saying that.
So tell us what happened and why you believe that you lost in Staten Island.
Well, first of all, as I was saying before we went live, this is such an honor. It's a highlight, man. I've been a fan of you both for years and years. First of all, let me talk about what happened in the campaign, and then we can talk about kind of the analysis thereafter.
Okay.
You know, when you win a campaign, everyone thinks you are perfect, right? And no one asks any questions. When you lose, everyone jumps in, starts to analyze this and that. It feels a little bit like, you know, your friends and family are debating your cause of death as you're lying there in an open casket. I mean, it's crazy. And certainly what's emerged is I think a caricatured and false explanation for why I came short in my election. But after the death of Mr. Floyd, or the murder, in fact, there were obviously, as you know, and your viewers know, there were marches and calls for justice around the country. And it was and still feels like a seminal moment, an inspirational moment, a moment for real change. And Staten Island, we saw that in its fullest. An organization that had just emerged called the Young Leaders of Staten Island did a march to a local police precinct and under the banner of calling for peace. What's fascinating is that they did this the right way. They worked with the community. They emphasized that this is a peaceful march. They, in fact, met with the police beforehand and framed it as an opportunity for the police to hear them out so they could work towards a better future. And I thought it my responsibility, in fact, my obligation as their congressperson. I represent the entire borough of Staten Island, not just parts of Staten Island, to be there with them, to show my support and solidarity with them, but most importantly, to listen to them, to hear them out, to make sure that they knew that their congressman was hearing their calls for justice and their proposals for a better America. Now, within 3 hours of me being there, now keep in mind, I was the only elected official on Staten Island to show up. And when I was campaigning, particularly in communities of color back in 2017, 2018, I promised that I would be different. And people kind of said, yeah, right, we hear that all the time. But I took that pledge really seriously. This notion that I'm not just going to think about my next election. I'm not going to slice and dice the electorate. I'm going to take risks and I'm going to do what I think is right. Politics be damned. And that was certainly a moment for that, if there was any. Within 3 hours of me being there, New York Post had an article, right? With Ed Mullins, the head of the SBA, that guy, that dude that got caught with a QAnon mug behind him. He on Fox News or something like that. He said Max Rose just indicted every police officer for the actions of someone thousands of miles away. Within several weeks, there were millions of dollars of commercials being on the air, both broadcast and cable, coming after me, yes, but you know what? I signed up for this. They're lying about me, whatever. But most importantly, vilifying these young men and women, calling them thugs, rioters, said Max Rose marched with the defund crowd. Max Rose marched with them. It was disgusting. It was vile. And it really divided the community at a moment when we should have been coming together, when we could have been coming together, when we still can come together. So folks can say that that's why I lost. I don't regret doing it for a second, just like I don't regret helping to co-sponsor the leading police reform bill before Congress in a generation. I don't regret that either. I would do it again because I was there to do a job, not to just win another election.
So what you're expressing, and which we often hear from politicians, is police using their perceived credibility with the community, leveraging attack ads against a politician for trying to hold them accountable, and you were basically a victim of that.
Well, first of all, this was the Republican Party, and I'm not going to caricature the police, albeit the police union leadership certainly played a very, very active role in this. And there appears to be this emergent sense.
Hang on right there. So you're giving, even though that was a police union guy, you're saying it's more the Republican Party.
No, look, I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to indict every single cop.
Got it. That's fair. No, that's completely fair.
Part and parcel of this. There are, and just because some folks made it us against them, I'm not going to do that.
That's right.
I'm not going to disrespect that cop out there who's trying to do the right thing, who's hugging his wife or husband goodbye every day, not knowing if they're coming home. We can't go down that road. Not sure if you guys knew this about me. I was a special assistant to Ken Thompson, Brooklyn's first African-American DA.
And you're a military guy, right?
Yeah. And Ken's how I really got my start in this business. He took a chance on me when I came home from Afghanistan, came back to Brooklyn. And this morning I actually watched the interview that you both did with him five or 6 years ago that I helped prep him for. And what we were doing with in Ken's office is trying to bridge that trust gap, doing programs like Begin Again to eliminate thousands of ridiculous warrants tied to low-level summonses. Basically, what was happening is that police, due to an implicit or explicit quota-based system, were criminalizing human activity. Things like walking in the park, spitting, walking your dog without a leash. I grew up in Park Slope, right? In the 80s and the 90s, man. I was doing that stuff all the time. I never even thought I could get a ticket for anything like that. Right. Drinking a beer on your stoop. I mean, it was absurd, but what Ken saw and what made him so special, and he also did this with his conviction review unit, releasing tens of young men and old men, unfortunately, who had been imprisoned wrongfully, is he saw that it is not just about the reality of what's happening today. It's trying to right the legacy of injustice as well. The scar tissue is still there. That's what I think has been lost in this conversation, is that when people are marching and expressing their pain at the murder of Mr. Floyd, right? What some police officers, certainly the police union leadership, is saying at that point is, well, what the hell do we have to do with this? Why are you indicting us because of the actions of others? When in reality, we have to be looking at not just a present reality of racial injustice, but also the legacy of it as well. We have to have sensitivity towards that. And we also have to build out a system of accountability where, calling me crazy, I don't think a cop should be able to do something that I couldn't get away with doing in Afghanistan. That's not too much to ask. That's not an indictment of every officer. That's not disrespecting their service. That is just trying to build a system of justice for all and safety for all. I think we can get that done. I'm not giving up hope on that.
So in just 2 years, you went from winning by 11 points to losing by the same margin, which is crazy and kind of rare. Like, it feels, Max, like so much of that has to be based in sort of this base hatred narrative. That's what the commercials appeared like to me. I mean, it was so wild to watch these commercials and see how they were trying to label you. And in fact, I'll be honest, as someone who doesn't live in Staten Island, was removed from it, I ended up accidentally getting turned off to you because I was inundated with such crazy commercials surrounding your name.
I know, man. You and my sister actually got into a fight on Twitter.
I know, but I did apologize. I hope you saw that.
Wait a minute.
You apologize, but
wait. Slow down. Sorry, Max. Rosenberg, you got into another Twitter dust up with a woman that happened to be Max Rose's sister. We can't just gloss over that.
The order, and I'll let Max explain it from his perspective. The order I believe that happened was the election ended. I heard Max lost. I accidentally celebrated his loss when, in fact, I wanted him to win. Like I said, because I was confused by the commercials I'd been getting, which was a ton of them. And then his sister, who didn't say it was his sister, I forgot how she said it, came at me, and rightfully, and I was like, oh, God, did I get that wrong? And I went and looked, and then I tweeted again. I was like, you know what? You are absolutely right. I'm sorry. Okay. That was how I think it happened, Max,
God.
but feel free to take me through it.
You're 100% right. She said, man, I've been listening to you since I was 5 years old. 5 years old, and plus then she said, man, Rosenberg's the only liberal dude who likes UFC too. I mean, it killed her. It killed her. But we on behalf of my entire family, we are grateful that you apologized.
Of course.
But I won by 6, and then I lost by 6 in the span of 2 years, right?
Okay.
Part of that was definitely attributed to the fact that Trump was on the ballot in the year that I lost, and I voted to impeach him. Another issue that, look, I would do again, knowing the political consequences that I suffered from. And keep in mind, man, like, this is a job I love. This is a job that I'm honored. I'm still honored to have, that to serve and to be able to help people and be people's voice on the floor of Congress. I don't take that lightly, but I swore an oath to the Constitution. I didn't swear an oath to politics. It was actually the second time I swore that oath, the first time being when I enlisted in the military. So, but a big part of it was these incredibly hateful and vitriolic ads. Now, again, though, like, to a certain degree, that's politics. It's disgusting. They came at me. They beat me. But it wasn't just me that they came at. And what I found, as I spent more and more time in the run up to the election, as I was out there on the streets, handing out masks, this and that, what I often heard, or at least sometimes heard, was, oh, Max, you marched with them. You marched with the defund crowd. You marched with those looters. You marched with BLM. To which, and there's actually video of this, to which I respond, yeah, you caught me. Like, what are you going to do? This wasn't a defund march, but this was certainly a march in support of Black Lives Matter, a peaceful march at that. But it was the ways in which these advertisements divided the community. That's what really was so difficult to see. But what's really inspirational is that the young leaders who led this march, right? These young leaders are still fighting. They're still working. They're registering voters right now. They're not giving up. And if they're not giving up, I ain't giving up. And thousands of other people are not going to give up until we can actually build not just a just form of policing. Because I think that doesn't do this movement justice. This is about building a just healthcare system. This is about building a just economy. This is about making sure that, especially during a pandemic, we don't have billionaires and millionaires making out like bandits while we have an unemployment rate near 20%. This is about, during a pandemic, that we don't see incredibly disproportionate levels of death and sickness in certain communities of color and not in others. That's what this is about. And to me, that's a lens with which to dedicate one's life towards policymaking. It's not, this can't just be a one-off. You can't just be like, hey man, I hit that march, got my tweet, got my Instagram post, let me move on. I think it's a collective life commitment.
Max, do you believe that we ask the institution of policing to do too many things in our communities? Do you think the list and our expectations of that job is too much?
You see, I'm actually disappointed in some ways that the conversation has gone this way, where what we say in response to police reform is, well, in certain instances, we just have to not have the police out there on the streets. That's an unrealistic perception of the way this actually works on the ground. You know, when there's a 911 call, so they often don't know what they're exactly going to, and you don't want to necessarily send a social worker out there either, not knowing, right into a potentially dangerous situation. I say that as the son of a social worker. I think what's critical here is two things, most importantly. One is that we make sure that we have far better training in our police departments, far more accountability when people step over the line, but also a dramatic culture change, as well as an integration of the police department with other services. You can have folks working together. Why in a downrange, in a deployment, I'm seeing soldiers going out there with USAID and the State Department and this and that, and they're working together. Why can't we see that here at home? Now, I'm not talking about the militarization of the police.
You're just saying that different organizations working together for a common goal, and using their instruments, of law enforcement and health and human services, using their instruments in concert.
In concert, 100% with.
But the reason I ask it that way. The reason I ask it that way, and the reason you avoided the question that way, is because there is a sensitivity around the money. Police don't want to lose their funding. They don't want something else coming in and controlling the purse. This does, and that's why, and I talk about it on the air. Yes, Black Lives Matter has been spun by a certain side, and people are afraid of, well, now it's this and that. Fuck all that. I don't subscribe to that. Those people don't have that kind of power on my platform that I'm responsible for. Fuck all that. Defund the police. Me and Rosenberg have argued about this. Oh, well, it's terrible this, it's terrible that. I don't give a fuck, right? The only thing that people understand in the United States often is if you don't change, you're going to lose money. So and on top of that, the reason I say that is because we cannot expect the taxpayer to continue to pay for police not being accountable to their behavior. And so for us to pivot, defund, pivot, change, reimagine, whatever, the money's got to come from somewhere. And I don't believe asking the taxpayer to fund something else while also funding the continued police bad behavior is a solution. So the reason I ask it that way and the reason we get stuck on this is because the money has to come from somewhere. They defund schools. They defund health and public services. They defund youth programs. They defund all types of shit. They take money from it and they allocate new money to new things all the time. But when it comes to talking about police and the institution of policing has made people afraid to have that discussion, as if my money, my tax-paying money, is yours. My money should go where I want my money to go to. And just because you got a badge and a fucking gun, every politician is fucking afraid, like just what just happened to you, Max Rose, that they're going to get attack ads put against them and they're going to lose their job. So we end up fucking tap dancing and soft shoeing and doing all this bullshit to not hurt people's fucking feelings.
So I got nothing to lose right now. So let me just give it to you straight. Okay. First of all, and I've said this very publicly, I'm going to say it again. Nobody should look at Max Rose's congressional loss and use that as a justification for a retreat from these issues. Nobody. That would be wrong, and I'm going to fight that tooth and nail. No one should say Max Rose lost, so we have to go easy on criminal justice reform. No one should say Max Rose lost, so we have to take a step back from addressing racial equity or socioeconomic injustice and all the like. We've seen particularly the Democratic Party do that in the past. They cannot do it again. Now, certainly when it comes to looking at budgets across the spectrum, if there's fat, you got to take the fat out. And no one should be immune from that. The point that I'm trying to make to you, and again, with absolutely nothing to lose, okay, do we need to put more into the community? 100%. Do we need to put more money into housing, into addressing health equities? 100%. Should that be our top priority? Absolutely. But if we are thinking that the road to police reform lies in dramatically reducing the police budget, I don't necessarily agree with that. You could reduce a police department's budget by 50%. And if you do not do anything else, you would have dramatically reduced public safety efforts while also still having potentially an incredibly prejudicial, possibly racist institution that has not fixed a thing. It's one reason why accountability is so important. It's one reason why culture is so important. It's one reason why training is so important. So when an officer does break the law, when an officer does step over the line, it is made very clear that that is not acceptable. But also what you're looking at is the fact that it's not just the big instances that make the headlines. It's the myriad of small cuts, the myriad of ways in which policing in modern day America has criminalized human behavior in certain communities, where people are feeling a level of stress and anxiety when they are leaving their home that is totally unjustified, and it eventually builds up. And I don't blame them. I don't blame anyone for feeling that way, not for a second. That just speaks to the ways in which we have got to fix policing in America. And if you only look at budgets, you will not do this issue justice. That's merely the point that I'm trying to make here.
It's the human issue.
It's the human issue. You know, look, I'll give you an example for something that we should really be considering. Police commissioners, the NYPD police commissioner, right? That is appointed by the mayor. That's a civilian appointment. I do not see any reason why, if we are looking to make a culture change in police departments, if we're looking to institute accountability mechanisms, I don't see any reason why that person should be an ex-cop. I don't see any reason why that should be someone that came up the ranks from an organization. Now, when I say something like that, people say, whoa, Max, that's crazy. That's insane. We do the same thing for the Pentagon. Now, to the point that if we want to appoint an ex-Army or military officer to the head of the Pentagon, who's been there within 7 years, it requires a vote from Congress. Why is it so different when we do it with the police?
That's a great point. And on top of that, could it be an elected position?
It absolutely could, and it is in many different places around the country.
I was thinking that
sheriffs.
too. Like some cities have elected, the population elects the police commissioner.
You have elected sheriffs across the country. Now, there's pluses, there's minuses to it.
Right.
We keep on thinking that we got to solve this with new legislation where you have an elected official appointing the heads of these police departments. And that is a great mechanism for accountability. It's a great mechanism for culture change. And it's a great mechanism for building trust between communities and the police, because if we don't have this trust, and that was always Ken Thompson's North Star, if you lose that trust, public safety takes a hit, justice for all takes a massive, massive hit, and no one is served in that process. And right now, there's no trust whatsoever. And we have to figure out how to address this. But step one, when we address this, is that when people are marching, when people are expressing their pain, when communities are coming together to do that, you cannot turn around and think, well, why are you yelling at me? Why are you upset with me? What the hell did I do? That is a moment when we have got to listen and try to work together to fix society because it is broken right now.
Well, that's the accountability piece, right? You got people in uniform with a badge and a gun and a license to carry it and all this other thing. And then as soon as people get mad with them, they want to go like, well, yo, why you mad at me, huh? I'm just, fam, you're in a leadership position. That's what happens when you're in a leadership position, right?
Absolutely.
When you work for the public, people get mad at you. And you're the closest thing that they have to actual, and we've talked to NYPD officers about this. Like, the pedestrian folks, they don't know the difference between somebody who's a police officer and a government official. Like, you're the government. You got a badge and a gun. You can kill me. You're the government. That's it.
I don't think that, and I would never support acts of violence against the police.
Of course not.
And I've listened to you guys plenty of times saying that that's not right either. I've also heard you both plenty of times say, look, there's plenty of great cops out there. There's plenty of folks that are trying to serve their families. There's plenty of folks coming from all different types of backgrounds who are trying to do the right thing, feeling a lot of pressure, feeling a lot of anxiety, particularly right now. It's not wrong for us to be sensitive to that, sympathetic to that. But I'm sorry, you have to step up and be there for the community, particularly when they're expressing their pain, and particularly when they're doing so in a peaceful way, so we can figure this thing out rather than vilifying each other.
Well, Max, I think a lot of people, if they're just hearing you, they're outside Staten Island, they're hearing you for the first time here, will be impressed with your tone on a lot of these things. You're now going to take this to a mayoral race.
Wait, what?
That's happening, right?
Well, look, what was recently announced is that we are initiating an exploration of doing this, and that's going to take part over
Max
the course
Rose
of this
for
month.
mayor. I kind of like it has alliteration. Max Rose for mayor.
It kind of works.
Quick name, right?
Mayor Max. There's Mayor Pete. Mayor Max sounds way better than Mayor Pete. Let's keep it 100.
Mayor Max is tight.
But let me just say this though. I'm a fourth generation New Yorker, right? And I believe in this city. And what I think we have lost in New York, whether I do this run, whether I become the mayor or otherwise, somebody else, we have an opportunity in New York City to show the rest of the country how it's done. Everyone thinks that there's this false choice right now between safety and justice. You either support the cops or you support the community, and you got to choose. New York has an opportunity. New York City has an opportunity to, I think, show the rest of the country and the world that is an absolutely false choice. But we only do that with bold measures to ensure justice for all. And when we place that as the priority, I think we can be a city that we can be proud of.
Well, and not only that, but Max, your fade that you got, you need to show Rosenberg how to get a ball fade. Because Max Rose ball fade is putting you to shame, Rosenberg.
Well,
Max Rose came on here looking clean, big. Look at that. Look at
my boy Dashi against the grain, St. George. Rosenberg, I'm happy to bring you
hold
out
on. But hold on. Do you have any hair? This isn't fair.
Yeah.
You went full baldy, didn't you?
I get cut once a week.
But you go skin? You have skin or not?
No. This is a one fade.
Okay.
And keep the sideburns, trim it up a little bit. Dashi's been cutting my hair for years, man.
That's what I'm telling you. White guys with good haircuts, man. Listen, if you don't run for mayor, white guys with good haircuts.
Still another opportunity for you.
Good, man. Maybe that will be a time when my family can have a good interaction with you on Twitter.
Well, listen, keep us posted on this mayoral thing. I think that it could be an interesting run. I think things are actually pretty open. You never know.
Well, thanks for saying that. And we will most definitely keep you posted. And again, man, I've been a fan for so long. This was such an honor.
Sorry about the Twitter misstep. Not my first.
She's bounced back.
All right.
Yo, and Max, like I said in the beginning of this conversation, I respect, look, Staten Island gets a bad rap. I know there's a lot of great people out there. There's also a lot of craziness out there too. One of the boroughs I consider the Florida of New York for sure. But I did, in hearing you in acknowledging your loss, wanting to continue to fight, and you being a New Yorker that represents everything that we just heard you talk about, I wanted to give you a moment so that people remembered your name. So if we see you later on, not only can we support you, but we can hold you accountable for staying on your message.
Absolutely. Hey, I appreciate you so much again. Thanks for this opportunity.
Max
Thanks,
Rose.
Max.
Nice to meet you, man. Take care.
Be safe, guys.
All right.
Be safe.